Welcome, everybody, to the Adult Child in Recovery podcast. My name is Vanzana Atara Ora, and I am your host today. Thank you so much for finding the time in your busy day to join me. Today, I have a very, very special guest. Her name is Denise Lee. Hi, Denise. Thank you for joining me.
Vanzana, it's a pleasure to be here.
Awesome. So Denise G Lee is a healing and leadership coach. She specializes in helping individuals and business leaders navigate trauma, relationships, and personal growth. She has over a decade of experience in business and leadership. She combines her expertise in emotional healing and executive coaching to offer a really unique approach to sustainable success. I love that. And you empower executives, business owners, high achievers to challenge limiting beliefs, develop healthier emotional patterns, and integrate personal healing with professional growth. And I know, Denise, your goal is to help clients heal, grow, and really lead the way with clarity and purpose. So important. I think we all need you. Or someone like you. We all need that anchor or just someone to support us, right? And because there's a lot of change, a lot of accelerated transformation happening on the planet, and sometimes it feels a little topsy-turvy, where we don't even have time to really get to know ourselves or discover our gifts. So Denise, you're also the host of the Introverted Entrepreneur podcast. I want to know all about that. Denise, you've produced over 600 episodes, delivering straightforward, actionable insights on topics like mental health, which is the most important overlooked thing that we really need to work on. That's our number one priority. Stress management, that goes along hand with mental health, and decision-making. And your work emphasizes empathy, resilience, and practical strategies for overcoming both personal and business challenges, right? You also have an amazing website, deniseglee.com, right? You also feature over 112 articles covering topics around leadership, wellness, and emotional health. So I can go on and on talking about you, but I'd like to hear from you today. And I'm sure whoever is meant to be tuning in to this podcast will also be curious about your own background. What is your story, and how did your childhood experiences, whether small or big traumas, lead you to become or grow into the person that you are today?
Boy, as you were reading through that, I was thinking, are you talking about Oprah? No, I'm just joking. Everyone who's listening, I want you guys to understand something very important, that everything is not by accident, nothing but was by chance, and that the information that you will receive will only able to help you to the limit that you allow your fears to not conquer what you've been hearing. For a lot of us who have been recovering from childhood traumas, stressors, we've been telling ourselves a narrative about what is, what could be, and what should be. And I want you to allow yourself the freedom for the next 30 or however 40 or whatever long minutes we're going to be talking, to give yourself the permission to be open and receptive to healing and to learning something new. Because for a lot of us who are survivors, we were trapped in situations, and we think as a result of that, we can't overcome, achieve. And we just want to hear other people who have not been able to survive, because we think, well, that's the only thing that exists. And I'm here to tell you, as someone who has survived sexual, physical, verbal abuse from my parents, someone who has been raped multiple times. I'm a survivor of alcohol and sex addiction, that I'm proud to tell you that I can actually talk more about thriving and not just surviving. So I want to start off and explain a story about how I grew up. One of my earliest
Thank you.
memories, thank you. My earliest memories as a child, Banana, was holding the crib and shaking it as hard as I could, not because I was looking for my mother, but because I wanted to get away from her. I grew up in a situation where it wasn't until I was 11 years old when I was able to sleep by myself. There was multiple times where my mother would sexually put her finger inside my vagina and fondle me. I was forced to be able to simulate sexual acts I didn't even know it was at the time with my mother. It wasn't until foster care took me away at 11 years old. I spent a year away. In between that, I had a stint in a psychiatric hospital because I thought I was trying to kill myself in front of my foster mother. Then going in and out of different abusive, manipulative relationships. I was sexually abused by a school counselor when I was in my junior, senior, and when I was in high school. I'm not saying all these stories to tell you about woe is me. Because I think for a lot of us, the reason why we don't really want to heal is because we don't really want to we don't hear anyone relate with us in a story that we can understand.
Yeah, I hear you. I definitely hear you. I mean, I'm part of a group called Adult Children of Alcoholics and Dysfunctional Parenting. It's a 12-step group. And I was with them. I created my own group where we would talk about stuff like this for a year and a half. And then I needed some space and I needed to investigate other forms of healing modalities because it just felt like being an empath and highly energy sensitive soul is hard enough, but when you hear hard enough to deal with, your own stuff, right? Own unresolved trauma, but when you're hearing it on a weekly basis from other people who have experienced, similar traumas, it was overwhelming for my nervous system. But I do believe in support groups. I do believe in whatever works for you, but it is so therapeutic to just talk about it and just also to be heard and not to be censored or judged. And that in itself is so healing. So I just want to thank you for being so vulnerable and transparent with me today.
If I had to be really honest with you and everybody who's listening, I'm not sitting here to be vulnerable because I want to connect. I want to be honest because I want to
Yeah,
heal. And the more
absolutely.
I say what had happened for what it really was, but here's the
Yeah.
flip side. That same woman, my mother, was also a survivor of abuse and trauma, clearly. That same woman was also dealt with anxiety, loneliness, and depression. That same woman who also abused me was a victim herself. So I want everybody who's listening to understand that in this whole crazy situation, everybody was suffering. And we can't just reserve compassion just for ourselves. True healing requires compassion for all.
Yes, absolutely. And of course, children who are traumatized, victimized, abused, neglected, abandoned, right? All of those things. Um, we're raised by, adult children, unhealed, wounded, abused, mothers, fathers, grandparents who never were able to heal themselves. And so it's generational, it's ancestral, and all those traumas it's like we inherit them and they're transmitted to us. And so, but it's like, what do we do with that? Right? And how do we heal that and not necessarily turn it around, but how can we allow all those difficult childhood experiences to just make us stronger and not fall into the same horrific patterns that were modeled for us. So I wanted to ask you, Denise, I already know the answer, but is there anything else that inspired you to become a healing and leadership coach? As far as your background, is there anything else that you wanted to share with the audience?
So this is audio only, but if you can clearly see that there's a whole bunch of books right behind me, and I've got way more books than this, way more books than this. And the reason behind it, and they're all on healing and trauma work.
Oh, this is going to be on my YouTube channel, so people will be
Oh,
able to see your books.
okay.
Yeah.
I got way more than this on my Kindle library. And what was happening, Vandana, was that I was reading and I was studying, and at first I remember I was in this woman's lifestyle community. And what I didn't know was a gold diggers club, but that's neither here nor there. And anyway,
Okay.
I would write these comments about my insights and what I've been learning. And as I was writing, people would say, "Man, do you have a blog? Do you have something to talk about this?" And I didn't think to even share it because I was focusing at the time was business coaching, business,
Right.
key performance indicators, where, you're talking about how to optimize your day, how to hire, how to market, like all this other stuff that, me and a bunch of thousand other women on Facebook was trying to do. Well, now Meta. And meanwhile, I wasn't realizing that there was so much information that I was accumulating that not only resonated with me, but clearly was resonating with other people. So what was doing was taking the brave step and actually doing what actually lit me up, not just what I thought would light up my bank account.
Awesome. And that's like that's everything, right? Is that we're in alignment with who we are in our hearts and our souls. And as soon as we are no longer in vibrational alignment with who we, like, not only who we are, but our gifts and our, just what's fun and what's joyful. And that's when we struggle, I think, at least for myself, the most, when I'm not really being truly me. Yeah, so what about your podcast? Like, I haven't actually heard it yet, but I am definitely gonna dive in. Can you share a bit about what happens? Is it just you? Do you interview people? Or I just wanted to invite people to jump on your podcast as well. Can we talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you so much for asking. The Introvert Entrepreneur podcast, it's been on since 2019. And at first, it's evolution, just like we're evolving. And it was originally first literally about business basics, how to market, how to like personal branding, how to journal, all this other stuff. And then as I was talking, I couldn't help but kind of infusing it with more information about the things that I was learning in my own trauma and healing development work. And then it started evolving into me talking with world-renowned therapists. And it was me talking with doctors, psychiatrists about what it is to survive and thrive as a survivor of traumas, addiction issues, and whatnot. So I usually air on Mondays and Wednesdays, but it's most of the time it's me talking by myself, but I also invite wonderful guests from wide walks of life, but specifically more therapists, practitioners who understand the healing journey. And would you allow me to kind of rewind a little bit back outside of my podcast about One Mother
Absolutely.
Journal? I appreciate
Absolutely.
that. So a lot of people, and I mentioned this earlier, they handcuff themselves and they limit themselves before they start. And I want to talk specifically about healing. I think a lot of people say, well, I can't afford this therapist. I can't blah, I can't whatever. And I'm not discounting anybody whose bank account balance says X and there's not enough commas. Maybe there's a single comma, forget about two commas or more. And so what I
Mhm.
want to say to everyone who's listening, who's afraid about embarking on healing, and they just think, I just want free, or I just don't think I can get certain things. I want to say that that mindset came from a woundedness from our childhood when we were deprived of the things that nourished and healed us. And so
For
part of
sure.
that healing is, I'm not saying go and spend everything everywhere. I'm not professing that. But I really want people who are listening and thinking to themselves as they're listening to this podcast or interested in learning about my podcast, wherever you guys want to go, I want to ask you, as you're healing, right? What are you
Mhm.
hearing yourself tell yourself about what you're worthy to receive? And what are you telling yourself about what is possible right now? Because a lot of times we block ourselves from blessings based on our past
Mhm.
hurts.
Absolutely. I mean, especially if we were told no repeatedly and we could never have our needs met, or barely or rarely ever, it just becomes a false belief system, a program, a life script, which I wanted to ask you about. How do you work? I mean, unless you're wanting to talk about something else right now, is it okay to shift a little bit over to how you work with people from a trauma, not a drama, but drama is in there too. But how do you work with people, with your clients from a trauma-informed perspective, using life scripts?
Okay, that's a great question. So let's back up a little bit and explain what the life script is.
Yeah.
So a Eric Berne, the founder of a offshoot of Jungian, Carl Jung, had a theory called transactional analysis psychology. And what that is that as a child and our early experiences, we learned in order to get along with our parents, our
Hmm.
school teachers, whoever, we had to be able to do certain things in order to get a stroke. And when I mean a stroke, I'm not necessarily talking about a physical stroke. I'm talking about care, love, affection, acknowledgement, security. And so
Hmm.
we learned early on if we had to play nice with our parents, even in ways that harmed us and harmed others. For example, I'm thinking about when I was growing up, the collection callers would call my home frequently. And in order to be seen as a good person, I had to make sure that I pretended like everyone else that the phone wasn't ringing and it was a collection call person.
Mm.
I was the
Right.
transaction of learning if you want to do good, you ignore people who are actually trying to hold you accountable. So in order to do that, you're gonna have to gaslight yourself. So you may resort to not feeling about the pain that you feel, the discomfort, not thinking about how our actions or inactions might harm or hurt others, including ourselves. We may not be able to feel joy about the experiences that we have going on. We intentionally numb ourselves. That came
Yeah.
from the things that we learned. So when I talk about understanding your life script, I'm talking about understanding the habits, the tendencies that were useful and needed as a child, but are actually harmful to us as an adult. And so on the banner of my website, deniseglee.com, it's a quick 15, you can click on the link, it's a quick 15-minute where I ask a series of questions and you will immediately get a result about what your life script is. And so I think it's a really fun, quick, interactive way for you to understand that what your life script could be. And there's links on my article on my website, deniseglee.com, that explains what the life script is in more detail.
I would love to take that to answer those questions, and that's the first thing I'm going to do when we finish speaking today. So, a life script, would you say it's similar to like an autopilot program? These are like unconscious patterns, programs, and sort of energetic imprints that get sort of that we hold, that are buried in our tissues and our cells and, our limbic system. Would you say it's something like that?
Wow, I love what you said, Vandana, because that encompassed so much. part of it. On a cognitive level or thinking level, as words are neurological level. So when I think of let's talk about each one, because there's a, and our brain level. So let's talk about each one. So on a cognitive or thinking level, right? In order for us to get along with other people, we learn certain habits. For example, let's say you grew up in a very volatile family, and in order to feel safe, you may had to be defensive because you were so used to being attacked, either verbally or sometimes physically. So if you were always on your defense, right? That was how you stayed safe. That's your habit. And so if anyone says anything to you that you believe is crass at work or on your driving, you see those road rages, they're triggering the script of don't nobody mess with me. And we see it all the time. It goes on autopilot, right?
Yeah.
So let's talk about it on the brain level. In our brains, there's a part of our body part of our brain called the limbic system, and then there's a little P-shaped thing called the amygdala. And so what the amygdala does is it takes signals from how we feel, right? If we're feeling a little nervous or tight, sends signals right to our brain, the amygdala. The amygdala says, "Wait a minute, I don't know what's happening. I don't know what's happening." Then it releases, we're in danger, sends hormones to the adrenal glands, releases cortisol, norepinephrine, adrenaline, just to name a few chemicals.
Fight, flight, fear,
Fight
freeze,
or flight.
fawn, shut
That's
down. Yeah, all those things.
That's those a response to that based on the hormones. So then on top of it, on a cellular level, we've got these kind of things on the tips of our DNA called telomeres. And if we're used to having stressful situations, those recessive things pop off. And then we're allowing our body to be more inflamed. And that if that is not taken care of, it can result in mutated cells and can result in cancer. It also impacts us on a genetic level. We carry those genes from generation to the next. So there's a lot of things going on.
A lot of moving pieces. Yes, absolutely. So wow. Yeah, there's a lot to heal. We need a lot of healing. And we know it doesn't take overnight. We know that healing is a process. We want to trust the process and try to remain open. And like you said before, it's all about the ability to receive these blessings and not block them, and not just have all the burdens passed on to us from our ancestors, but also to recognize the gifts that are also, the resilience and all of those good things that were passed on from, the people that came before us. And a lot of them were wounded, what I call adult children. So it is a cycle. And it's hard to break out of that looping system. But I guess we don't have to. We just have to, wherever we're at. I mean, how would you handle, or what would your approach be if someone like me came to you seeking a session? What would you tell them?
Well, first of all, I hope you're a business owner.
I am. I am a business owner.
The reason why I say that,
business owner though, but I am, and I've been working for myself as a spiritual entrepreneur, small business owner online since 2013, but in person since 2007 when I became a Reiki master teacher and I left my 9 to 5, the 9 to 5 phenomena back where it should have been. I just kind of left it all behind and took that leap of faith and found all these gifts that I never knew I had if I wouldn't have made that jump, into this different timeline. But yes, I am a business owner, to answer your question.
I just want everyone who's listening to understand that there's wonderful healers, practitioners, therapists out there that specialize in specific demographics. And so I want to make sure that I'm not misleading, because I do get people who send me messages like, I don't own a business, or I'm thinking about running a business, but I want healing. And I'm like, that's awesome. And I refer them to colleagues.
Yeah. Thank you for being authentic. Yeah. Appreciate that.
Yeah. And so what I would say to anybody who is a business owner who is interested in healing, my first question is, what are you doing to feel safe for yourself? And safety is not just emotional. It's also financial safety. If you're in a spot, and I've talked with this with so many people, it's like running a business is the personal development course of your life. It's going to expose you emotionally, financially, spiritually, like on a lot of wells. And if you're feeling dried out financially, please plug in that hole right now with a job or something steady to keep yourself a good solid cash flow, so you don't feel rushed and anxious to do desperate things that cause you to do things that come out of brokenness, and then inevitably can cause you to re-traumatize yourself in the process. And I want to give you a perfect example. I was thinking about one particular client that I had. It was a few years ago, and this was during the pandemic. And she wanted to grow. She was a minister, and she wanted to expand that, but spiritual healer as well. But she also didn't have enough money because her daycare business was struggling. Her daycare business was providing the food on the table. The spiritual was just crumbs. There was no way that she was being sustained. I said, hey, look, I know that you love my work. I know that you've been seeing progress, but you're not feeling safe financially. Let's put a pause on some of your other ventures financially that's causing you financial trauma, so that you can feel safe again, so that you can be
Yes.
able to take, because there's a risk being an entrepreneur.
Oh, yeah. It's walking that fine line. I mean, it's living on the edge. I once was talking to this guy, and he said to me, I could never do and I could never live the way you do. And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, you work for yourself. You don't have that secure, like that security blanket. You don't have like a steady paycheck, you're living on the edge. And I never even realized that that was true until he pointed that out to me, because money was never like my top reason for what I do at all. I mean, I had a business partner who would say, oh, I'm in this for the money and for the, yeah, basically for the money. And I was like, wow, I'm not. So maybe that's why I'm in the position I'm in. But of course, I mean, we want to do what we do with integrity, whatever that may be. But you're right. I mean, there is financial trauma, especially that gets passed on to us, and we inherit the trauma genes, right? The anxiety genes from our parents and grandparents who, that poverty mindset. And I get that. And I was raised in that environment. So it's an ongoing battle for me. But what I've learned is just to become really aware of when those patterns come up and seem to overtake me, right? So that I'm not swallowed up by all of those life scripts, those programs, that don't even belong to me. So it is an ongoing process. That's not one and done. So I really appreciate your work and what you're doing for people from this, coming from this approach.
I think that we can still, as entrepreneurs, we can still serve different clientele in different ways. I think that for a lot of us, we only think that serving is necessarily financial. Serving can
Right.
be volunteering. Serving could be having conversations that other people can listen into. Serving could be writing content on
Yeah.
social media or on your blog posts. Like, serving can come in different ways. But if you're trying to be fed when you're starving yourself, all you're going to do is become famished and drag other people down with you. And that's not what healing's about.
No, it's the opposite of healing, actually. Yeah, that's a really good point. But we can serve in many different ways. It's all energy anyway. It's just energy, vibration, consciousness. So, but energy, I mean, there are different ways of energetic exchanges besides, dollars, besides money. And so that's an important thing to remember, to be of service. That really is our priority. What advice would you give to people who are considering hiring a coach like you, just to make some positive shifts in their lives? Is there any, do you have
Yeah.
anything that is really, that you feel is really important for people to know right now?
So in a space where there seems to be everyone, because here's the thing, the coaching industry has a no barrier to entry. You got GoDaddy or Wix, you're a life coach. You can go online, spot $300 and boom, you're a life coach. And I'm not sitting here and saying that every single person that dawns on the title of life coaches is suspect. But what I will say is to do your homework. I mean, there's a reason why I tell everybody before they even decide to work with me or work with anybody else, don't just
Mhm.
listen to a couple of podcast episodes. Join their mailing list, see their offerings, read their content, listen, go on Reddit, like go ask. Like, for example, it was funny. I was actually just curious about my own profile. And I wrote my name, like, tell me about Denise G Lee on Chat GPT. And it knew about me. That's pretty awesome. The
Mhm.
point I'm trying to make is that a reputable coach has a stamp everywhere. And for a lot of trauma survivors, we have the funny way of one of three attachment types. And when I'm talking about that, I'm talking about the attachment theories developed by John Bowlby and later expanded by Mary Ainsworth. And so 35% of us are secure, right? This is the folk that we feel comfortable with intimacy and independence. We're generally warm, loving, and responsive in relationships, and we can trust other people. But that's if you had a normal, stable childhood. The rest of us
Mhm.
either float between anxious attachment, where we're
Yeah.
seeking high level of intimacy and approval, which can lead to dependency, right? We
Yep.
might get attached super fast. So we might watch a Facebook or whatever live, and they say, hurry now, buy now, we're in it if we are anxious. Because we don't know, because we believe the hype, or we could be avoidant. We could be so where I'll read my own books. I've read Melody Beat. I've read Codependent No More. I've I don't need you. I'll do it all by myself.
You sound
But
like a friend of mine who thinks she knows everything, and she just like, she's so shut down, and I realize that she's a trauma survivor too, but everyone has their own way of dealing with the trauma, right? So yeah.
yeah,
So
and
and is there another attachment
yeah,
style that you wanted to share?
yeah. About just to your friend. I mean, she might struggle with intimacy and often suppress her feelings. She
Yeah.
might avoid closeness and prefer to keep relationships
Yes.
casual, 10,000 foot deep,
At a
whatever,
distance.
at that distance, not being part. But the last one is disorganized, also known as fearful attachment,
I,
where
yeah.
it comes from the trauma, inconsistent caregiving, and these people have a friendly toxic mix of anxious and avoidant. Come a little close, not too close, come a little further, no, I didn't mean that. And it's just like a head scratcher to what this person wants or needs. And so what I would say that if
Yeah.
you're working with a real healer, a true healer, they make accommodations, understanding that you are either anxious, avoidant, or disorganized. And I'm fully aware that I have had people have been on my mailing list for over 3 years, and they may never work with me, but they feel safe at that level. And if and when they decide they want
Mm,
to deepen their attachment, that's
yeah.
cool. But I
Right.
understand that. So find a
Yeah.
healer that understands who you are.
Yeah. Exactly. And has compassion and is safe, is like that safe person that we might have, adult children, many of us don't have that safe person consistently. Maybe sometimes one of the parents is safe, but it's conditional. And if you don't give them what they're asking for, then get punished. And so it seems like no one is safe out there. And like we said, the amygdala, your nervous system, kind of feels like everyone may be a potential threat and danger. So we can never really rest. And that's why we wind up so hypervigilant and eventually get burnt out in our business endeavors, right? So, and I think a lot of us are struggling with kind of hovering over the edge of, potential burnout because we try so hard. We're people pleasers, and we have that all or nothing thinking. Like it's either everything or nothing, or it's my fault. It must be my fault. And we blame ourselves. I have some of that going on too in business is slow. It's like, oh, maybe it's like the not enough syndrome, right? Or the imposter syndrome, or it must be me if it's slow. It's like, no, maybe it's just timing, or maybe people are busy. It's like maybe people this, that, but we tend to dishonor ourselves, I would say. And that really, and that's unnecessarily painful, and that could be another addiction to sabotaging ourselves. So yeah, there's a lot to say on this topic, and I'm glad that you're out there. I don't really know anybody else who operates the way you do. So it's really refreshing to meet you and to know that there are more, I'm sure there are other people like you, but the way that you integrate, healing and a trauma-informed coaching practice that also specializes in women who, have their own businesses, like business owners, because there is a definite relationship between childhood trauma and what happens, how we're impacted as adults, and our businesses are a reflection of how we feel about ourselves and the world. Would you agree with that?
I mean, absolutely. To be fairly frank with you, it wasn't even till like, I would say like a year or so that I realized that I was reenacting old trauma wounds by trying to compare my business trajectory based on what I observed outside.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's definitely a tendency, the self-judgment, the inner critic, all of those parts of those wounded parts, like trying to take over if something doesn't feel safe. And as business owners, we don't have that boss, anymore. We gave that up. And I mean, some of us have part-time gigs, but not all of us. And so it can feel like a really terrifying um choice to make, but it's also the most rewarding when we're in the flow, when we're in that zone, and when we're doing when we know when it's really we have that connection to source and our higher selves, and we know that what we're doing we're meant to do, and this is for our highest, right? And but it doesn't always feel that way. So it's kind of like a roller coaster ride of emotions sometimes, with all of that noise and that chaos that still hasn't settled in our nervous system. So, but I guess, like, what else did you want to say about encouraging people not to give up? If people like that are listening now are coming from that background.
Well, you mentioned something earlier, and I think I want to tease out a little bit better is the nervous system. And I specifically want to talk about your dysregulated nervous system for people who are survivors of childhood traumas, uh, chronically stressful situations. Your nerves are completely frayed. I'm just going to be flat out and say that. And coming to talk with me or a therapist or a
Yeah.
healer to talk is an epic waste of your time. I'm just going to be really honest with you in the beginning of your journey because you're suspicious, you're paranoid, you're locking doors that were already wide open. And so what I would really advise anybody who is even in the initial stages of healing, forget about business coaching, forget about all of that, is I would invite people to learn more about somatic healing. And so somatic means body. Yoga therapy, equine therapy, hop on a horse, connect with your dog, your cat, an animal, feel safe and connected with another warm human being, a warm object, not necessarily a human being, or connecting with your body, massage therapy. Those are all wonderful ways, just to name a few, right? Reiki, right? That's another example. I don't care what you do,
Yes.
just find ways to get your body feeling calm, centered, and at ease. That allows your prefrontal cortex, the top of your brain, to suppress all the symbols for pardon me when I say this, all the signals from your limbic system, your amygdala, your thalamus, saying for these bad things. Like, no, we're not there yet. We're not there, right?
Yeah.
Because here's the thing: a lot of people who are survivors of trauma, they mistake presence from power. And let me explain what I'm talking about. The reason why we fear is that we see something, but we don't
Hmm.
understand the power it has over us, or may not have any power over us. For example, if you don't pay your bills, the electricity company has the power to disconnect. But someone who doesn't smile in the morning does not have the power to steal your joy. They're present, but they don't have power over you.
Yeah.
So part of calming the body allows you to recognize the power that you have over yourself and the power that other people have over you, or may not.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I think, I mean, you're definitely, I mean, that's great advice and really important to remember. Um, because adult children do often feel powerless repeatedly, not just like once or twice in their lives, but repeatedly. And so it's kind of like what you said, being in our bodies and just allowing ourselves some breathing space to step back from all of that anxiety, like future past anxiety mindsets. Because that's the way we operated all our lives. So it's going to take some time to kind of rewire those circuits, right?
Yeah,
So yeah,
yeah, for
I
sure. It's gonna,
appreciate that.
yeah. There's a lot of people who are in the recovery journey and they believe that healing has to take one specific path, right?
Yeah.
I'm supposed to do certain things and then I'll get this result and then I'll feel better about myself. When the
Hmm.
reality is it's more of a dips and valley experiences, and things can come out of left field,
Hmm.
a relative calling you. You may be getting upsetting news that reminds you about certain other stuff that happened in the past. And so as part of your healing journey, right, part of safety is recognizing that stuff's going to happen.
Yeah.
Stuff's going to happen.
Hmm.
And I know that's easier said than done, right?
It's a
But
process.
resiliency is not holding tight to patterns and to habits that but is
Yeah.
allowing yourself to release and know that you're still being held, if that makes any sense.
I love that. I love that. That's so refreshing for my ears to hear, and also that we're not alone,
Yeah.
even though you could be married and have a million kids and a really big family and a ton of friends, but still feel alone. But honestly, we're all connected and there's someone for everyone, you know what I mean? But it takes some time to find that right therapist, to find um and a coach or a healer who we can feel attuned with.
I
And
mean,
so, yeah,
yeah, yeah, I can't tell you how many therapists I burned through, how many people I cursed out and said they didn't know anything about me. I can't tell you how many healing programs I've bailed, how many people I said I couldn't afford it or whatever. I can't. And the reason behind all of that was because I was so addicted to controlling my own outcomes. And that comes
mm,
from the trauma.
yeah, yeah, so true. It does. And so I just want to thank you for your wisdom, your grace, your guidance today, and your offering, which is definitely a blessing for me and for whoever is meant to be here and whoever is meant to find you. So again, can you just remind people how to find you online and your website, your podcast once again? You want to share that?
Yeah. Yeah, no worries. So literally it's just my name, Denise, DenisegLee.com. And it's a hub for connecting with me on socials, my podcast, all that, learning more about my stories, my articles, all that fun stuff. Here's the thing. I don't want to be like, I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on TikTok, I'm on I know.
Right.
I
All the social media platforms. I'm everywhere.
yeah, I'm like, I'm everywhere you want to be. Like, this is not a Visa
Right.
commercial. I just want to make things, I live my life
Yeah.
easy because I know that the people who want what I have want to know what easy looks like.
Yeah, totally. Thank you for making it easy. You were a great guest today, and you have so much, so many valuable um offerings, and just by you being showing up today was a gift for me. So thank you, Denise. And I also want to just share where people can find me with ease, and that's vanzanalighthealing.com. And also my YouTube channel is Vanzana Light Healing. That's V like victory, ANDAN. Sorry, let me start again. VANDANA lighthealing.com. Yeah, and thank you so much. It was an honor to be with you, and I look forward to staying in touch and checking out your website myself. So have an awesome day, Denise, and thank you again for being of service. Take care.
Thank you for having me.